Okay, so or probably not, as the case may be. I thought we'll talk about. It's been in the headlines a bit, but the story isn't entirely new. We have known since last year that there may be an asteroid coming to hit Earth in 3032. Specifically December the 22nd, 3032. How do we know this? Because of Newton's physics.
Can they find out
30,
a bit earlier so I know not to do my Christmas shopping? Because that's right in the sort of area where I'm like, do I do my Christmas shopping? Don't I? It could be that it's all in vain.
It's extremely unlikely to hit the Earth at all, but if it does, almost certainly won't be anywhere near us.
Oh, great. In which case, never mind.
Have the scientists adjusted the doomsday clock? I know they like to do that when we're this close to doom and disaster. We're now 14 seconds closer to midnight.
So this thing they've called 2024 YR4, that's its name. And so a few numbers, and any Fedora tippers out there, do forgive me if I get some of these ever so slightly wrong. Thing is, the reality is we still don't know all the details about this thing, but I'll go into that in a moment. So it's somewhere between 40 and 90 metres across, this asteroid.
That's quite big.
So, I mean, in the scheme of things, it's not too big. If it did hit us, I mean, it's travelling somewhere in the region of 13 to 17 kilometres per second, which is obviously
very fast,
insanely fast. But we don't know really exactly what it's made of. We think that it's not just a pile of rubble. It's like a single big rocky object. It's not a comet, so it's not icy. I think it probably hasn't got a metal core, so it's just a big lump of rock travelling about 13 kilometres a second and between 40 and 90 metres. So to give it some perspective, the thing that wiped out the dinosaurs 65 odd million years ago was in the region of 10 to 15 kilometres across. So if this thing hit the Earth, it would be, well, still they don't know exactly, be somewhere between 1 and 40 megaton, the equivalent of between a 1 and 40 megaton blast. So that's enough to completely annihilate a city, but it's not a mass extinction event. It's not going to like create some sort of never-ending winter or anything like that.
Put things into perspective, 40 metres is the width of 3 London buses to the Americans. I know that's not the most useful metric for you, but you know, it's a sense of scale.
I love putting things in terms of how big it is compared to football pitches.
I know.
They mean by that American football pitches, which are always 100 yards.
If we really want to translate to Americans, how many burgers is it?
Depends how tall the burger is.
I mean, across.
In size of volume or mass? Are we talking? So, okay, actually, there were some of the last links I put up about Barringer Crater. Can we just go straight to those, please, Samson? They're towards the end, the Barringer Crater. So there's this thing in northern Arizona. There you go, sometimes called Meteor Crater or Barringer Crater. And that was about the size of this thing. This was the original thing that hit there, was between 30 and 50 metres across. So roughly in the same ballpark as this 2024 YR4. And Barringer Crater, I'd love to go there. I'd love to visit it. It's in northern Arizona, not a million miles from Flagstaff. And I'd love to go there. I'd really, really love to visit that. Yeah. I'm more fascinated by Meteor Crater than by the Grand Canyon, and I'm fascinated by the Grand Canyon. I'd love to go to the Grand Canyon, but this even more. So anyway, it gives you some sort of... There were some people in the other pictures to give it a bit of scale. So anyway, if that... And that thing didn't even hit the Earth, they don't think. They think it blew up just sort of very, very close to the surface. Because back early in the 20th century, they did loads of excavations to try and find... They thought there'd be massive iron deposits there. There just weren't. Same with the Tunguska event, probably one of the most famous ones. People know about that. I've got an image or two, if you can find those, Samson.
The Russian one, isn't it?
Yeah, so back in the very early 20th century, over Siberia, there was a cloudburst. There was an airburst of a large meteor, or asteroid meteor, that came in and almost certainly sort of blew up very close to the surface, but didn't actually probably hit. There's no crater at the Tunguska event, for example. So
lots of famous pictures similar to that one of all of the trees flattened, aren't there?
Yeah, and these images were taken quite a few years later before Russians went there with photographs. It's very early, what was it, like 1912 or something like that? Anyway, So the Earth gets hit by stuff all the time, right? If you live in an area where there's not much light or air pollution, and you look up on a clear night, it doesn't take long before you see a shooting star.
When I've been camping on Dartmoor, I've seen several. Right. In my lifetime, I've seen nearly 100 or so, I think. And even in January, I showed a video on the podcast of a Canadian household having a meteor land on their front doorstep. It was only a very small one, and there was lots of fizzing and like smoke. But their doormat was still intact.
Incredible, isn't it? Yeah. If it's a nice clear night and you look up, you just spend 5, 10, 15 minutes just staring at the sky, you'll see a shooting star probably. So in other words, small amounts of material are bombarding the Earth all the time. But like our atmosphere is like a protection, because of if you're travelling at kilometres per second and you hit something as dense as air on the Earth, it will vaporise you. So that's why even quite big asteroids, when they actually come into the atmosphere, will almost always burn up, unless they're big enough. In fact, there was an event about 10, 11 years ago. I think I've got a video of that as well, Samson, of something hitting a Russian city, flying across the sky. It's one of the YouTube clips. Right near the bottom, Russian meteor about 10 years ago. I call
it is.
Yeah, play this. Watch this. We don't need the audio.
So there was this video.
So there was a piece of rock travelling through our solar system for millions, perhaps billions of years, and then suddenly one day, at kilometres per second, it hits the Earth. And this, just like the meteor crater, and well, actually not in the case of meteor crater, but in the case of the Tunguska event, it got very close to the ground before breaking up and burning up, and it did. Apparently there was a massive bang. It blew out loads of windows. A few people got injured. I don't think anyone died, but quite a few people got injured where they're sort of looking out their window, and then the next second their window's blown in and they get all shards in their face and stuff. So
nasty.
Lots of people were hurt, but I don't think anyone was killed. Anyway, the point is, and this was like about 10 or 11 years ago, it just goes to show that we're not immune from things coming in and hitting us. I mean, over the age of the Earth, we've had many mass extinction events. People know of the dinosaur one, 65 odd million years ago, but there's been many.
Before that, it was all giant insects, wasn't it? And before that, again, it was giant mushrooms, according to the archaeology.
All sorts of megaflora and fauna. Yeah, so the big one, the one I'm most fascinated by actually, was the Permian Triassic mass extinction event, which happened long before the dinosaurs even. We're talking, is it 400 million years ago in that region? Sometimes it's called the Great Dying, because with the dinosaur one, what was it, something like 40 or 50% of all creatures and plants went extinct because of that. But the Permian one was even more. It was like 80 or 90% of all things. So we've had at least half a dozen mass extinction events. Not that this 2024 YR4 is anything of that magnitude, but the point is that we can get hit by, or are hit by things all the time. So, okay, all right, with all that being said, a little bit of background context. What is this thing? So there's a video of the other video link I've got there. Where it's from Scott Manley. Now, everyone knows I like my history, but I also like my science and space stuff, don't I?
That means something.
I really like Anton Petrov. He says he got a great channel, Anton Petrov.
Oh, yeah.
He says, hello, wonderful people, all the time. He's a really nice guy. Dr. Becky, I like the Astrum channel, Alex McColgan, John Michael Gaudier. There's a number of channels that I watch all the time. I'm not watching politics and history things. I'm watching space and science things. But I also really like this guy, Scott Manley. And all these people I've just mentioned, they're real experts in the field. They're not just fans of science. They're sort of actual professors and things. So anyway, could we watch this? I said, could you play it from about 1 minute 18 in? Because just about a minute worth of him talking gives us, roughly there.
So it was from our point of view, it was sort of coming out of the sun and flying past the Earth into deep space, headed out towards Mars. And the initial observations put it on an orbit which goes into a perigee of about 0.855 AU and goes all the way out to about 4.22 AU with an inclination of maybe 3 to 4 degrees. And it just happens that it passes very close to the Earth's orbit. Importantly, when it was first discovered, the orbital period was about 4.04 years. And since then, that orbital period has got a lot closer to being 4 years, which means it comes back exactly to where the Earth is 4 years from now. So yeah, observations of this continued. And as we get more observations, the orbit gets better and better. And that means the uncertainty gets smaller and smaller. And eventually, that means that the big...
So the point is, it flies by us every 4 years or so. And we know that the next time in 2028, it won't hit us. It will come close, but it certainly won't hit us then. At first, they thought it might have hit us then, but it's not going to. But in the next time round, in 2032, there's a possibility, and it's still quite a small possibility. They thought, the reason why it's in the news cycle is that they thought it was like a 1% possibility, and more recent, because they just keep taking more and more measurements, it looks like it might be as much as 2%, or a bit over 2% likelihood. Now, that is a bit worrying, isn't it? But it's still quite unlikely to hit us, really. And what Scott Manley there was saying is that probably at some point in the next 4 years or so, we'll get a clear enough idea of exactly if it will or won't hit us. I suspect it won't. If I had to put £100 on whether it would or it wouldn't, it wouldn't. But
98% odds of being right.
Right, yeah.
I'll take that.
And even if it does hit us, they already know, because of Newton's clockwork universe, we already know where it's likely to hit on the Earth if it does. And I've got, if you put those tweets up, Samson, next one, that's NASA just saying it might hit. So that's where it's likely to hit us, if it does at all. So there's places like Bogota, all sorts of Central Africa, and like Sana'a in Yemen, maybe parts of India. It could hit. Go to the next tweet. Actually, I think they mention. Yeah, so there's that corridor, Lagos, Mumbai. I mean, if it hit in downtown Mumbai, that would be bad, and it was 40 megatons.
Yeah.
They don't know if it's 25,000 tons or 1 million tons. Not sure whether it's 40 or 90 meters across, but say it's the bigger end of that. Say it is 1 million tons, and it is traveling 17 kilometers per second, and it hits square on Mumbai. That's going to be pretty bad, isn't it?
Or it could just hit somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah. See,
that would be the best case scenario if it does hit the Earth, it goes in the ocean. Right?
If it hits the Earth and no one gets hurt, because even if it hit the ocean, it wouldn't cause some sort of devastating tsunami. Pardon me. So if it is going to hit the Earth, I would actually like it to hit somewhere where no one gets hurt, in the middle of the Sahara or something, or the ocean. I'd like to see it. I want to see the footage of that.
You just want to see an awesome crater out.
Yeah. Give me a decent crater with 0 casualties. I'm on board for that. I want that. But yeah, of course, if it was hit a city, that would obviously be terrible. But I still don't think it will. Honestly, it's unlikely to hit the Earth. But, it's good. I think it's cool that we're living in an age where we've got any sort of warning.
It is reassuring, isn't it, that we can know well in advance. Because it seems quite unlikely that something's just going to, shoot across from outside of our solar system and just directly target Earth, is it? That doesn't seem to be the case. Normally it's something that's rotating and so observable.
There's a few different things. So we've swept our orbit around the sun pretty good now. Gone around it a few billion times, right? So that there's that. But then there's the asteroid belt, the main one between Mars and Jupiter. And then there's the Oort cloud way out beyond Neptune, and we could get any number of those could, for whatever reason, come in towards the inner solar system and become a threat to us. But then there are also objects that are in sort of interstellar space, and as we go round the Milky Way, sort of come through our orbit around the galaxy. Like there was that Oumuamua object. We weren't sure. So sometimes, quite often, in fact, we're not aware of a big object until it's too late. Until it's sort of been and gone, even. Sometimes. It's a bit worrying. Sometimes NASA...
I've gone from being hopeful to worried to hopeful to being worried again and again throughout this.
Slingshotting you on this one.
It's funny, it's both. NASA will say things like, we've got this particular project going on and we've mapped every large object that's likely to hit the Earth and we're all good.
Except for that thing. Oh, my
apart
goodness.
from this thing now we've just found. Or then there'll be another article and they'll say, an asteroid which was pretty bad, maybe not a mass extinction event level 1, but still pretty big, decent. It passed within a few million kilometres of Earth, in other words, very close. And we didn't spot it until it was already past us. So it's sort of both things. Anyway, at least we're living in the age where some sort of warning is available. So we'll see as we get closer and closer to 32 December 2032. We'll know. But so there are some things people might say, well, can't we do something about it? If we did realise in a few years' time that it is there's a 99% possibility it's going to hit the Earth, what can be done? Well, there's a number of things that can be done. A lot of people think, we'll just shoot it with nukes, but it's not really. That's really quite a difficult thing, or it's not technically the right thing to do, or whatever. But what you can do, well, there's this thing, the DART mission. NASA's got this thing called the DART mission, and it's sort of testing all this stuff out. So there's actually a clip, is there a YouTube short from the DART? Yeah, so there's these 2 asteroids out there, one big one, and it's got its own little moonlet, another small asteroid circling a bigger asteroid. And NASA flew the actual spacecraft into it in a head-on collision, and to make measurements to see what it did. And the thing they flew into it was about the mass of a fridge. It's a bit bigger than a fridge, but I think its mass is about the size of a fridge. And it flew into this asteroid at about 6 kilometers a second, and they measured everything. And if you have a head-on collision with it, it's basically you're slowing it down. The idea of pushing an asteroid left or right to push it out of the way, that's not really a thing. It's better to either accelerate it or decelerate it so that the geometry, so that its orbit misses what you want it to miss. So in other words, anyway, this DART mission, they basically shot an asteroid with a spacecraft and measured it. And it worked much better than they thought. They thought it would change this asteroid's trajectory by effectively by a few seconds or a minute or two, and it changed it by quite much more than they thought it would. And it's the same. There you go. This is real footage. There's all the people that don't think space is real out there laughing at us. How can we think that space is real? But yeah, so there was a small asteroid circling the bigger one, and it flew straight into it.
Is this directed by Stanley Kubrick?
I mean, it looks like the intro to Eraserhead to me.
And
I wasn't saying that in the moon landing sense. I was just saying it seemed like a film technique that he would use, zooming in like that.
So there's this idea that we could there's the possibility that we could fly certain things into head-on collisions with 2024 YR4 and effectively slow it down a bit. You don't need to slow these things down by a tiny fraction for it to miss entirely.
Also imagine that if you're slowing down the speed at which it's approaching, it spends more time in the atmosphere and it's more likely to burn up as well, even if it is directly hitting.
Yeah, maybe. It's just to make sure, because the window it would have to hit to actually collide with Earth is tiny. It's really tiny. So you'd only have to change its speed or trajectory, effectively, a tiny amount to make sure it misses. But it wouldn't be obliterated. So the next 4 years, 4 years after that, it may come close to us. And then the next 4 years after that, it might come close to us. So anyway, it seems like we'll be living with this 2024 YR4 for the foreseeable future, unless the space agencies of the world come up with some sort of plan to deal with the threat permanently, which I've not heard anything about yet. So anyway, it's been in a news cycle a bit about this thing that might hit us in 2032, and I wouldn't worry about it, to be perfectly honest, because even if it does, we don't live in Sanaa or Bogota or Mumbai. So,
but if you do, be worried.
But if you do, keep your eye on the news, because in 8 years' time, you might want to go visit your relatives in the country on that day, on December the 22nd. But we'll see. We will know within a few years. The probability of it hitting Earth will either go up to it's quite likely, or just fall off a cliff, and it's a 0% chance. So, but we'll see. I'm fascinated by all this sort of stuff. The few channels I mentioned earlier, if anyone else is, go check them out. Antron Petrov, Dr. Becky, those sort of Astrom's a great channel. Okay, that's it.
Thanks for watching, folks. If you'd like to support us, come over to lotuses.com, sign up for £5 a month, and then go and watch Connor and Harry's detailed breakdown of the latest Nosferatu film. I actually haven't had time to watch the film yet, but I did watch the breakdown, and now I really want to watch the film. It's an amazing piece of work, and I think you'll really like it. And while you're here, go over to X and follow us at lotuseaters_com.